Hello and welcome back to We Are in the Golden Age. I'm your host, Peter Ross of the Melk family, and this is the Revelatorium Revelations video series. The wordsmith himself is back with us today to fully explain the Tree of Life. It was mentioned in last week's discussion and will be fully fleshed out tonight. So stay tuned and here we go. Delstar, would you please take it away?
Well, all right. Thank you very much, Peter. Glad to be back.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and it's I like yakking. This is a good chance for me to yak, But the Tree of Life was mentioned briefly last week. The Tree of Life in the Bible, the painters have a tree up on the side of Mount Sinai or something with flames coming off the bushes, It's nothing like that at all. It's actually at the very, very heart of how creation works. It's one of the universal creative principles. And it's based on, as I mentioned last week, it's based on the 12 signs, what we call the 12 sun signs of the zodiac. Basically, those 12 frequencies are throughout creation as those 12 frequencies, but they're tailored to every different environment, different planets, different solar systems and so on, and different super universes. I mean, they're all tailored to the environment they're in, and they're also tailored to the particular solar system and the frequencies there. The point of it is that there are only those 12 in all of creation, those 12, and they're called astrophysical frequencies to distinguish them from the sun signs, okay? It's the sun signs that we know that we're talking about, but they're called astrophysical, all right? And they're throughout creation as is. There are 12 of them with a frequency that's descending. There's 12 of them with a frequency that's ascending, the same 12 but ascending frequency. So there's only the 24 families in all of creation, okay? And the interesting thing is that as the soul atom, like you and me, the soul atoms were, the son, daughter, child of the creators, as it were. When you're brought into creation, you're expressed as one or another of those 12 signs. So the thing about that is that every 25,000 years, which will be part of this explanation I'm going to be doing today, but every 25,000 years, you start again at the beginning of the 25,000 year cycle, and you're back in your original sun sign. Well, astrophysical sign of birth. So you told me your birth sign. I can't remember it.
Yeah, I'm a Libra.
Libra, fine.
Yeah.
Well, you were created as a Libra. That's what I'm getting at. I'm a Pisces. I was created as a Pisces, except for the odd time where somebody passed away and reincarnated quickly and so on.
Yeah.
The point is that you are in the birth sign that you were given by the Creator at birth. That's your frequency. Now you'll go through the next 25,000 years. You'll go through 24 different incarnations as different signs, male and female, before the 25,000 year back up again. You're back in your original. But right now, because we're at that, this is part of the 19 points of what's going on that I'm going to tell you next week.
Yeah.
One of them is that we're at the end. We have finished a 25,000 year cycle and we're starting a new one. So you will be going again through all of these incarnations. But let me get back to, I've got the fact that it's not a tree with branches and flames coming off. It's a universal principle, okay? In the Bible, it says, well, let me jump ahead. You know of the 12 sun signs that are once a month?
Yes.
Okay, and they work clockwise through the progression, I'm going to use Earth's terms. Now, those are going to change because the astrophysical signs each have a universal principle. And they're known in the higher dimensions by the principles they are, rather than the names that were given. Some were given in Atlantis, the rest in Babylon. And we're still using them, right? And those are going to be phased out down the road, but I'll use those because everybody knows what they are. We'll go with that. So you go through clockwise, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, around the clock.
Yeah.
Okay, once a month. The Bible has a reference where it says that the Tree of Life bears 12 manner. I'm ahead of myself. Wait, let me see if I can read it properly here. The officers, this is in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's referenced. The astrology is in the Bible and nobody knows it. Their officers served the king in any manner of the courses that came in and went out month after note through all the months of the year. So the courses are, of course, in comes Pisces, out goes Pisces, in comes Aries, out goes Pisces, in and out through all the months of the year. What most people don't know, and some do, but what most people don't do, that the same 12 signs occur every month. But every 2.5 days, you're in, and then to the next, and the next, and the next. And that's also in the Bible. And this is a good one. I like this one. The tree of life bears 12 manner of fruit and bears of its fruit 12 times a month. And you can't get it more plainer than that, you know. So that's how the astrophysics is working at this, basically at this local level. But there's another, and the third, of course, is this soul atoms are astrophysical.
Yeah.
But every 2,000 years is also an astrophysical principle. This is where the 25,000 years comes from. So we just finished the Piscean age. Most people have heard of the expression. Well, that started with Jesus 2,000 years ago, or with the bestowal of Christ 2,000 years ago. Just ended now, and we're now in the age of Aquarius. The fun part about this is that they're called a dispensation because for that 2,000 years, a new energy is dispensed based on the astrophysics of that period. See, so it goes counterclockwise. See, we're come out of Pisces, we're just going into Aquarius.
Yes.
And the first frequencies for Aquarius came in August of '88 when there was a twin core supernova in the Magellaниc Clouds, the Melchizedek whirls of the Magellaниc Clouds, and Halley's Comet was in the sky at the time for stability. But that was the first induction of the age of Aquarius. It ended in May of 2014. Now we're 100% now into Aquarius. Pisces is finished. The funny.
So would you say that would be the dawning of the age of Aquarius?
Well, the next sentence was going to be, you will remember from here. It's the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And they were talking, you know, when the moon is in the 7th house and that was May of 2014. They had it 40 years ago. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, I remember in the Fifth Dimension band also did that.
They did a nice take on that. That's one of my favorite pieces. You know, the second part, you know, Let the Sun Shine.
Oh yeah, Let the Sun Shine in.
Piece. Yeah, nice piece. Anyway, they were hitting on May 14th or May 4th, 2014. Way back then. But they're called dispensations. 2,000 years now. 2,000 years before Pisces were in Aries, you know, the ram and so on. Yeah. 2,000 years before that we're in Taurus, you know, the golden bull. 2,000 years before that we're in Gemini, which was the twin wolves. You know, Gemini's a dual frequency. The twin wolves, Romulus. 2,000 years before that was Cancer, the water, was the flood. You know, 2,000 years before that was Atlantis during the Leo. And so it goes. It goes. Now that's why whenever you look at an astrophysical chart or an astrology chart, the Pisces symbol has the fish going in both directions, and nobody knows why. It's because the sun signs go clockwise and the dispensations go counterclockwise.
So essentially that'd be the infinity symbol would be the fish swimming both directions.
Well, yeah, that's a different way of going at it. But no, usually if you look at any astrophysical or astrology chart or even horoscope chart, Pisces always has two fish. One's going this way, one's going that way. Or lines that, you know, there's always two. Okay. One going one way, one going the other. Well, that's because sun signs go clockwise and dispensations go counterclockwise. And the dispensations are, you go through 12 of them on an inducting. Well, you go through 12 of them on an inducting cycle, and you go through 12 more on a discharging cycle. Okay? Each of those, you go through, the first 1,000 years is induction, and the other 1,000 years is the discharge. So you actually have 24 different shots at it, as it were. All right. And for example, in this last 2,000 years, the induction is always quiet. and discharge gets busy. So the 1,000 years from 2,000 years ago to 1,000 years ago, which was the peak of the Byzantine Empire, it was a Melchizedek, because it was a bump.
Yeah.
Well, very, very little history exists of that period. It's very, very little, very, very little. That was all inducting.
Yeah, you don't hear much of that other than Constantinople.
But starting from 1,500 years ago, up the ladder real fast. And the same thing's going to happen now. We're going through. There's always a bump at the transition point. So we're in the middle of the bump of the transition from Pisces to Aquarius. About 100 years from now, it'll quieten right down.
Yeah.
And it'll go all the way through to 1,000 years from now. There'll be a bump. Then it'll another 5, and then 1,500 years from now, it'll start cranking up. Now, here's an interesting factor. Let me give you the principles of the sun signs, astrophysical signs, and then that'll explain better the next sentence I was going to say. Now, I can't remember them always, so I wrote them down. I'm going to do some reading, which I don't like to do, but so Aries exemplifies the principle of a universal sun, Taurus, the principle of Earth Mother, i.e. material hearth. Gemini, the male-female androgyne principle. Androgyne is male-female together in the same. All right, yeah, so. Cancer is the universal mother principle. I think most people know that. Leo, the universal father, and it also brings in solar law, and that's important. I'm going to get to that. Virgo, the universal daughter. Leo, balance and harmony, which you're probably quite well aware of. So Scorpio is regeneration and rejuvenation. This is an interesting one. Most people don't know what Scorpio is all about. Scorpio is the gentle reasons,
Yeah, the sacral chakra, or how they call it.
Yeah, well, and it does two things. It reproduces the species, that's the regeneration, and the rejuvenation, if you internalize properly and so on, that's where longevity comes from. It's through the rejuvenation aspect of Scorpio, all right? The Sagittarius is the arrow of truth. That's the guy, the half horse, half man, with the arrow. And the arrow of truth, if Sagittarians can be very illusionary in their beliefs, the arrow's in reverse. Because it's the arrow of truth. See? And then Aquarius is the outpouring of, I missed one. Capricorn is the gate of life, gate of death.
Yeah.
That means, and this is interesting, if there's a Capricorn in your midst and they're down, everybody's down. If they're up, everybody's up. Capricorn will control the moods of the group they're with. Let's put it that way. So gate of life, gate of death. That's what it means. And then Aquarius is the outpouring of truth, which we're now coming in. All of the symbology for, astrology now is the lady with the picture, the outpouring of truth and so on.
Yeah.
And we talk about this is the great, because it's also bringing, what that means is that the galactic law is brought through in Aquarius. And that's the great book is being opened at last, because it wasn't open like this since 25,000 years ago.
Yeah.
During the Garden of Eden, see? And it's now being opened again. And like I mentioned, the Revelatorium and associated books have been given through as a Cliff's Notes in preparation for, and again, to explain that these inductions and everything are coming in don't bring in the illuminations. They raise the consciousness so it can accept and work with higher and higher illuminations. And the illuminations come in through your soul atom. Your soul atom is always teaching you if you're ready to receive.
Yeah.
Down into your outer consciousness. So the inductions really just, the planet's consciousness is going higher and higher and higher in the energy levels, but that means that more and more and more enlightenment is able to be brought through into the outer consciousness to the interactions. So we're back to the fact that Virgo is, during Virgo, which was 14,000 years ago. Well, let's go all the way back. The last time we started this cycle was the Garden of Eden. That was 25,000 years ago.
Yeah.
There were about 15. What was being set up is a fifth dimensional population. See, I mentioned last week, and I won't get into the details of this right now, but the population on Earth right now that we're involved with is an anomaly. The bottom line of creation is the fifth dimension, but 3.5 million years ago, through Luciferian meddling, as it were, the Adamics were talked into going into the third dimension to experience blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
When you reverse your polarity to the creation from the creators, you're pushed down because, it pulls you in. And mankind has been in the third dimension, sucked in, now it's stuck for 3.5 million years. But because of things to come, and these energies that are coming in right now and so on, they've been cycling back every 25,000 years. They're back again, and they've been doing this for 3.5 million years. There was an effort 750,000 years ago called the Dalmatia Center.
Yeah.
There was a fifth dimensional effort to get them up there. But the reigning planetary prince Caligastia was tested about the Luciferian stuff going on, and he said he took a neutral stand about it. I'm not for it, I'm not against it, which you can't do. It's black or white up there,
Yeah.
So the Dalmatia Center was collapsed, and then there was huge glaciers for a long time. Then 250,000 years ago, there was the Lemuria, thing, which was another very high peak. The planetary prince again took it upon himself to advance a third of the Adamics out of the third dimension back to the fifth, to send them up out of sequence and against protocol. He wasn't allowed. He don't do it, but he did it.
Yeah.
So a line was drawn in the sand. Earth has been put under galactic quarantine ever since then. I think I mentioned this last week, but all of those that were 100% unequivocally loyal to Christ were moved off to Orion. And those that weren't, or not sure, or, gray zone, stayed behind and went through another big, long period of glaciation.
Yeah.
And that glaciation started to come out about 40,000 years ago in preparation for the Garden of Eden, which was again an attempt to bring mankind up into the fifth. But there was again Luciferian meddling, that said magicians, meddling, and Eve made a really big faux pas. That's the way to put it. So it was shut down on the spot, and again we went through a period of really fast, strong glaciations, and we came out of thaw on that 14,000 years ago, when during Virgo, which was planetary law, was being set up, and that's where the pyramids and everything, the original pyramids, that were put in as induction devices and so on. And then during Leo, which was 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, solar law is automatically installed. It's the Leo principle. Every 25,000 years on every planet. Oh, I should mention, when I'm talking about these dispensation cycles and sun signs and all this stuff, every planet in creation has the same principles, just different flavors of those principles, according to third place and so on. So every system goes through this period of solar law. Now, solar law is, again, based on the 12 sun signs. Everything's based on the 12 astrophysical principles. So, the astrologers say you have 12 constellations, and that's where these frequencies are coming from. Well, that's basically 100% true, because they're resonance chambers.
Yeah.
Okay, and they are resonating down to this solar system, the particular frequency of those 12 sun signs for this solar system. Okay, the sun itself participates in resonance chambers for other solar systems. So there's a line in the Revelatorium, I love it. It says, nobody has nothing to do.
Nothing in creation has nothing to do.
Nothing to do, yeah, because our sun itself is in constellations for other solar systems. See, nobody's at loose ends here. Everybody's doing something.
I like those two sayings. Nothing in creation happens for nothing, and nothing in creation has nothing to do.
Yeah. Anyway, so on the solar, solar level, and I mentioned this last time, but I'm going to detail it a bit better. Every planet gets one of the sun signs, re-expresses it with its own frequency added in back out to the other 12. So you have 12 times 12, which is 144. These are in, I'm not sure where in the Bible it references, but the 140, it might even be in Revelations, but the 144 facets of the throne. You've heard of that expression, the 144 facets of the throne?
Yes, I got actually the page on the Revelatorium up for the cubistic matrix of the 12 facets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there it is. Yeah, that's a depiction of the, you've got
12.
Let's see, 6, 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, you've got your 12, it's represented here. You got your 12 cubits around the outside there.
Yeah. And
each one of those has 12 facets inside. There's your 144 facets of the throne. That was the
exactly.
Depiction. Yeah, yeah. So what happened during Leo, now during Leo, the Virgo frequencies would be moved out and the Leo frequency would be put in place. You know, a population on a planet is in tune with solar law when they're aware of all of the 1,200 or 104, the 12 times 12. All right.
Yeah.
So now we're coming into that now, you know, in a fast, because like at the beginning of the 60s, if you believed in astrology, you were a kook. At the end of the 60s, if you didn't believe in astrology, you were a square. So it's happening pretty fast. It's catching up. So solar law comes in through Leo, but what happened during Atlantis, it blew up. This is another, I'm going to get into that maybe. I did mention it before, Sodom and Gomorrah and all of that kind of stuff. But anyway, it defaulted. So Leo never got properly installed. The remnants of the Virgo dispensation, and there's two that are sort of noticeable these days. The yogi position, you know, where you sit with your legs crossed and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That came out of Virgo because that was dealing with planetary law. And that was one of the practices to help, you know, enhance the frequencies and so on. Well, that came down through Atlantis, never got properly moved out, and stayed with the Tibets, you know, Tibetans in the upper plateaus, because they were never flooded because they were so high. And it came down over the Himalayas into northern India. And that's why these, you know, so-called ascended masters all across the bottom of the Himalayas there and so on, you know, they talk about 7 chakras and all that kind of stuff, because Leo never got properly installed, which would have told you about the 12 chakras, because this is the part I forgot to talk about, the tree of life. You have, Eastern mystics talk about 7 chakras. You actually have 12, and they're quite obvious. You have the 12 sun signs. The chakras themselves are each attuned to one of the sun signs. So Aries is at the top of the head, Taurus in the throat, Gemini is in the lungs out through the head. That's why healers and bakers and good cooks are all, you know, nice, you know. Cancer is the Christ center at the breastplate. You know, in the Bible, it talks about the golden breastplate that made of gold, you know, so on. Then, you know, Leo's in the solar plexus. Virgo, sorry, we're ahead of my, Virgo is the upper intestine. Libra is the lower intestine. Scorpio is the genitals, and that's where the 7 chakras stop. Yeah. And they sit with their feet jammed up against their inside of their thighs. That's jamming the energy up, because they don't recognize that in the inside of the thighs is your Aquarius. I'm wrong. Is your Capricorn's behind the knees. So Aquarius at the ankle, place. I've lost my track here.
It was the top of the feet and then the thighs.
Well, yeah, let's go that way. The top of the feet is your Pisces. Your ankles are your Aquarius. Behind the knees is Aquarius, or is Capricorn. Sagittarius is inside the thighs. Yeah. And they're denying that with the yogi position. That's why there's so much strife over there, because they're jamming up the energies coming down that would normally go boom, 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 down through and out the feet into the ground for purification, and then come back up, boom, 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 boom. out through the top, and when you're abundant, you've got a halo. But they're doing this, so they're jamming it up, and it's, it's firing backwards up, and it's a font of static electricity that their disciples think that's why they wear their turbans, and that's where they wear the, because that to them is spirituality. That's, So anyway, that Leo forfeited. All right. So now we come up to, and this is all in preparation for Pisces anchors the law. So the solar law would have been in, it would have been anchored, at the beginning by, the Christ Act in 2,000 years ago. And by now we should be in, heaven on earth, as it were. We should all be there 100%, but it didn't go that way because he got taken out. So it was just left high and dry, as it were. So now we come into Aquarius, where galactic law is brought into the consciousness of the planets, or the societies on the planets. And if every solar system, I mentioned this last week, every solar system belongs to a solar sector of 1,000 solar systems.
Yeah.
Galactic law is the 144 energy principles of solar law for every one of the 1,000 solar systems, which gives you 144,000 chosen ones. That's what the galactic law is, not the guys walking around patting themselves on the back. Ask any Rosicrucian on the planet, not Rosicrucian, Jehovah's Witness on the planet, anywhere, are you one of the chosen ones? No, they're over in New York. Oh no, they're over in Italy. Nobody is one of the chosen ones. Because basically there isn't anybody who walks around and says, I'm one of the chosen one. Well, there's a chance it could be correct because there's among the light bearers, the volunteers and light are carriers of one or another of those 144 frequencies. But there's not just one guy on the whole or girl on the whole planet that carries that safe. Reality always is safe redundancy. You have a number of people with that frequency. If one doesn't make it, that one might. If that one doesn't make it, that one might. So eventually somebody makes it, Eventually all 144 energy principles are balanced in consciousness, and they don't necessarily have to do anything. They don't necessarily have to even know they're doing it. They just have to be right in their heart and right in their actions, right in their thoughts, and true to their creators. It's as simple as that. That does it. And their frequencies are automatically balanced and harmonized. So, but so the 144,000 principles has the two sides. It has the energy principles represented, and it has the people walking around that are carrying those particular frequencies among us now. And it's coming along, I would say there's probably a pretty good number, because don't forget there's the enlightened population is probably moving up into the 10% now. It used to be like 2%, in fact, it's moving up into 10% now. So, and those are the ones, the chosen ones, the real ones, will be the ones that'll get there first, or more likely to get there first. No guarantees, but more likely to get there first. So now back to the galactic law. There's an interesting aspect of the solar law and galactic law, because it's not just like arbitrary frequencies come in and whoopee-doo.
Yeah.
The solar system does a trek around the Alcyon star in Pleiades. It's the really big central star. If you look at a star chart of Pleiades, there's a really big one there called Alcyon. Well, the solar system does a 25,000 year trek around it. Okay, so supposing you're like there's the star, and like consider it like the the halos around Saturn, and so the Earth does that. All right, but at right angles to that, going this way, just like a gyroscope thing, you got the ring one way and the ring, well, that way is a photon belt. You've heard about the photon belt. Earth is supposedly going into a photon belt. It went into the photon belt in October of 2012. And a lot of people started hearing a nonstop, the sign, or the doctors call it tinnitus, but you have a ringing in your ears.
Yeah.
And it's harmony of spheres. There's about 6 different frequencies that are constantly on the move all the time. You know, it's a really nice sound, and it's not loud. Sometimes it'll get a little louder than that, but it's always there. It hasn't gone away because your atoms are now sped up. That's what's causing the buzzing in the neurons in your brain are sped up, and you're hearing the buzz of the frequencies and so on. So a lot of people have that. If you are one of them, that's why you have it. And don't think you're going to take a pill and get rid of it. You don't want to.
Or think it's tinnitus.
Or think it's nice. Yeah, it's actually because we're in the photon belt. Well, the photon belt just happens to be 2,000 years across in Earth's or the solar system's progress. So over here on this side, this 2,000 year period is Leo. You come in this side, you come out that side, and all the way through that, the Leo solar law is being brought in. Now you go all the way around to the other side, on the other side of the photon belt, the 2,000 year period over there, you're coming on this side, coming out that side, that's Aquarius. That's where galactic law is brought in. It's really nice, it's simple. That's what the photon belt is doing. That because the consciousness goes very, very high during the induction of solar law, and then very, very high again through this photon belt, you know, this way and then that way. So galactic laws, and now we're just going straight into that for the next 2,000 years. So that's every planet, every solar system in creation has a similar thing about that. You know, a photon belt or something similar to a photon belt around a central planet that their solar system, and 25,000 years for here. It could be 2 billion years for there. Who knows? It could be 5 minutes. You know, I don't know. I'm just saying it's not. It's not. Scientists like to say what works here works everywhere. It's not that way. Everywhere it's different.
Yeah.
The principles are the same, but the practices are not the same. You know. The speed of light that they measure is here is not the same as a solar system over in Sirius. Now there won't be a big difference, but the frequencies are different in every solar system. You know, so everything is modified to that different frequency. So that's basically the tree of life stands in the midst of the garden, and bears 12 manner of fruit and bears its fruit 12 times a month. And you've got your 12, the imagery of you standing there with these 12 chakras and so on, you can see the tree of life inside you just clear as a bell, 12 times a month. If you listen every 2.5 days, you'll sometimes be falling asleep and you'll suddenly hear a big rise. It'll last about 5 minutes. A big rise in the buzzing that you hear, the ringing in the ears, and then it fades off. Well, you've just gone through a transition. And there's another transition too. When you're born, your soul atom, I don't want to use shocks or anything, that's wrong. But anyway, it springs your outer ego consciousness to life. Now this is in the new and starts to cry, but it springs the outer consciousness to life. And at that instant, the frequency of that moment is imprinted. That's your daily induction and discharge time. If you were born at 6:45 in the morning, every day at 6:45 you get an induction, 12 hours later you get a discharge, and you'll hear the buzz go up and go down, and so it's all these things all have a reason.
So sometimes those buzzes can be deafening.
Well, sometimes they get pretty loud, yeah, especially, and you can tune out everything else and get in on those, and I imagine people on acid, I mean, it's the same with the white light, this famous white light that everybody your soul atom is a pure white spark of diamond white light sitting in your pituitary gland. So all they were doing is getting close to the soul atom. The brilliant white light, they're tuning in. See, that's what, acid was a good thing, but it was handled badly. if it had been done properly, because it had tuned you immediately into your 105 higher senses.
Yeah.
Now, for some people, that was just like an avalanche of, and out they went, But done properly, you would have been taught into your 105 senses quite nicely and so on. And the white light is one of them, is definitely one of them. So now, do you have questions?
Yeah, why not? Okay, so we're covering the tree of life, and so everybody probably we know it's the sun signs, the same. It's solar law. The 12 times 12 is for the facet of the throne. And then we covered galactic law as well, the 144,000 energy principles, and the chosen ones. And the thing was that what was the question? It almost got zapped out of my brain here. I was just thinking. It just got zapped.
We also covered Alcyon, which that's one of all of the parts of the tree of life. In the midst of the garden, I like, and the photon belt.
Yes. Oh, that was the what? That was the question. So, isn't it the supposed North Star? Isn't it that star?
No, the North Star. That's the Polaris star. This is another aspect. I mentioned that the Dalmatia Center collapsed, and then we went into Lemuria 250,000 years ago. Well, Earth's magnetic pole reverses every 500 years. 500,000 years. Well, 250,000 years ago, the calamity occurred, so it didn't reverse. So as we speak right now, we're in a reverse magnetic situation because the poles never reversed. It's starting to happen now. That's one of the 19 things that I was mentioning. We're going now. See, the pole reversal isn't going to be like bang, and all of a sudden the cars start going backwards and birds start falling out of the ground.
300 mile high tidal wave. No,
it's the bees and the birds will be confused for a while, but otherwise we wouldn't basically notice it at all. There'll be somewhat, and it's already starting. There'll be somewhat more turbulent weather. We're already starting to see that, and so on. But Polaris, there's a ionic energy comes in through Polaris, the North Star.
Yeah.
And it's been coming in reverse for 250,000 years. That's part of they've been causing the negative, M+static conditions on Earth, because it's been coming in and giving consciousness a bang. And it's already started to do its own. It started in the 90s. It was, what's the word? It wanes and then gets stronger, then wanes and then gets stronger. Well, it suddenly started to wane and starting to get stronger again, but it's coming back into its proper ionic polarity. So, see, that's another one of the 19 things that are going on right
we'll
now.
We'll make sure we cover it all next week.
Well, that just to jump in on that with a quick little phrase, there's a confluence of frequencies on Earth right now that have never been experienced in this way, in that concentrated form before on a planet. And it's because of that we're in the cleanup and the aftermath of the Luciferian rebellion, which is called Armageddon. Now that's going through 1,000 galaxies, but most of it is around the Orion system here, because that's where most of the Luciferian stuff happened. And Earth is right in the middle of it. I'll get into there's a new day of creation coming, which is a whole talk by itself, and but Earth's right in the middle of this whole thing. All right. So these energies that are coming in now are all to do with the stuff that's coming along, and we're at the end of a 25,000 year. 2012, December 21st. Was the end of the old 25,000 year cycle, the beginning of the new.
Yeah.
Right. And we've just come out of Pisces. We're just now into Aquarius, and so on and so on. These are all high energy points. The frequencies go up when these transition periods. And because of the fact that this planet, and it'll be 750,000 years again, back to like the Dalmatia Center time, before the frequencies get back up to that and they won't even be on Earth because 250,000 years ago, 2,050 years from now, Earth is going to be a photostar in the womb of Orion, which if you are an astronomer or, amateur or not, if you look down the belt, there's a nebula down the sword.
Yeah.
Very Horsehead Nebula, it's called. But inside there is a stellar nursery. Okay. And just like, see, as above, so below, everybody thinks God with a beard and us stupid humans and so on. As above, so below.
Yeah.
Children become parents. Planets become stars. Child becomes parent. Stars, planets become stars. So Earth, planet is going to become a star, and it's going to have its own family of planets down the road. But it's going to be 250,000 years ago. The preparation is starting now, and the fact is, because preparation is starting now, the condition of humanity on its surface couldn't be allowed to go any longer because it was starting to interfere.
Yeah, impede with that. Teleporting the Earth to the womb of Orion, and
So because of the fact of these really super high confluence of energies, like I say, the higher the consciousness, the energies allowed the consciousness to expand, and the higher the consciousness, the more truth can come in. All right, but it doesn't come in by the inductions. It's able to come in because the inductions have done their end. See, well, because of that, the expression in Revelations is that Michael and his angels won a war in the heavens, and the dragon was cast into the earth. Okay, well, the dragon refers to all of the people throughout the 1,000 galaxies that have Luciferian conditions in their consciousness. And the reason why it's referred to as the dragon in the Bible is because most of them are draconian.
Yeah.
Draconian was the first to embrace the Luciferian stuff when they got started up out of Orion. They started in Orion, but the draconian system was already in a state of regression, not rebellion. The big difference. 50 billion years ago, it went into a regression, and it still hadn't come out. 5 billion years ago, when the Luciferian stuff went, and hey, this is great, so they embraced it. Not all draconians are bad, but the draconian, negative side embraced it pretty wholeheartedly. So most of the ones coming gathered up. Michael and his angel won war in the heaven. They gathered up all the people that have Luciferian shit in their consciousness. All right, and a very large portion of those were draconian, which is why it's called the dragon. And it was cast into cast into the earth. Well, that's what the population boom was.
The baby boom there, yeah.
The baby boom, yeah. The boomers, the baby boomers was that. That's why it was a spike. It went way, way up and then dropped right back off because it was an influx of the casted dragon was cast into the earth. Now, that's why you've got people from around creation that are slightly affected by Luciferian stuff or a real lot affected by Luciferian stuff. And now you see the Democrats, I don't mean the Democrats per se, but I mean those ones that you know about in the Democrats that should go away and never be seen again, and the Taliban and all those guys. They're really nutcases,
Yeah.
They're so-called terror, but that's where they came from. They're all those people that have incarnated, and they're holding to the type of regimes and authorities that they're used to from where they came from. These lesser. See, Earth, there's 2,700. Golly, I got it reversed. 27,000 planets in all of creation, all of them in this local universe, most of them around Orion and Draco, were only ones that were ever affected by it didn't go very far.
Yeah.
Big pain in the ass, but it didn't go very far. Okay. So there was only the 27,000 planets and all that were affected in the fifth dimension. And of those, there was only the 2,500 like Earth that actually had a precipitation of consciousness down into the third dimension like we have here. Because like I said, bottom line of creation is the fifth.
Yeah.
This is an entirely anomalous situation. There's a population in the third, very unstable in the long-term picture, and Earth is in the lower 10% of how bad things are, but we're at the top of that.
Yeah.
So underneath us, there's down there like 1 or 2%. They can be some pretty bad stuff, you know.
So are you saying we're higher up there, or like for getting things done and clearing, or are we like still kind of bottom?
We're in the bottom 10%, but we're at the top of that bottom 10%. Now we're in about the fourth octave of the fourth.
Hey, keep going. I'll just mute my mic.
Oh yeah, okay. The population's consciousness right now with the evolutions that or escalations, it's about it. The fourth dimension has 7 octaves, and I'll wait until you're done. Or should I keep talking? Oh, okay, yeah. Earth, the fourth dimension, this is the same throughout creation. The first 3 dimensions, 1, 2, and 3 are together as a unit. It's like, pinch yourself, your intelligence, your substance, and your energy all together at the same place. It's the same as the 7th dimension, which is a triune dimension. Intelligence, energy, and substance are equally represented, right? But the 4th dimension is like onions of a skin. It's escalation through levels. You have your 7 dimensions, 1 to 7, but you have 7 levels within each of those. Those are called octaves, and with each octave, you have 7. So you have 49 energy levels. United States would
7 times 7.
Yeah. United States, everybody thinks, the United States was set up by people that were advanced Masons. And people see this all-seeing eye, which is now the Illuminati, because they hijacked Masonry. And they say, oh, well, the United States was set up by the Illuminati. Well, it wasn't. It was set up by Masons before the Illuminati. That was done at the end of the 17th century, but the Masons didn't get hijacked until the middle of the 18th century.
Yeah.
So it was set up on, how many states are there before Hawaii, which is a misanthrope? It was pushed in by Eric. How many states are there?
49.
Oh, what do you know? What do you know?
And Alaska's the above one,
top.
so as above,
At
so
the top.
below.
At the top, yeah. So,
As above, so below again.
yeah. So the population of Earth right now is roughly about in the 4th octave, maybe halfway through the 4th octave. So we've got a while to go before, 2,000 years from now, we'll beat the, but Antares, Arcturus.
The Arcturians, I believe it was.
Yeah, Antares, yeah. Are right at the top. They're right there at the 49th, ready to, make the break, as it were. Pictor is also quite a bit up there. Some of the planets in Pleiades are. Some of them are in the negative state. But basically, that's it. We're at the top of the 10% of the bad ones, and do have a ways to go.
So
going well. Actually, things are going. Things could be a lot better than they are, but they could be an awful lot worse than they are. So
Oh, they could be drastically worse than what's going on right now. So,
well, I was going to say there was a couple of things that took place at the end of the 50s, early 60s. Had they gone through properly, Earth is the beta test. That's the point don't even think I made last week. The Earth is the first of the 2,500 because of the energies.
yes,
This is a golden opportunity. Let's get everybody here because we're not going to see this again for a long, long time. Get them here, get them Lysol. These energies are like Lysol.
Yeah.
So Earth is the first of the 2,500 to actually have a program afoot to get mankind back out of the 3rd dimension into the 5th dimension, which is why everybody's talking about ascension to the 5th, because that's underway. But that won't be completed until the end of Aquarius. And remember I mentioned that the dispensations were counterclockwise. So the next dispensation to come up is Capricorn at the end of Aquarius. And if you recall, I said the principle of Capricorn was gate of life, gate of death.
Yeah.
I've just told you when the final judgment is.
That's when all that rapture and things where all the humans get teleported off and all that stuff and to the other worlds so they can reincarnate in their 750,000 year another cycle, another world.
Well, if you don't, if at the end of Aquarius, you're judged by the gate of life or gate of death. If you're not there, you're into the gate of death. That means divested off to one of the other 2,500 planets to keep going through these incarnations until you wake up. Okay, if you are, in consciousness, because you're going to be incarnating. Doesn't matter, how high you are right now, you're going to be incarnating right through to the end. If you're at the high end, you're just going to keep, and you'll be a teacher or a way shower in these incarnations. You're already sort of one already started, in this incarnation, and you'll just keep incarnating through. Now you can always go backwards. There's no golden rule here, because when you come out, there's an expression again when I like in the Revelatorium. When you incarnate, you're incarnating into certain uncertainty, because you don't know what's going to happen when you come out of the womb. You've picked your parents and the frequencies, and you've accepted your responsibility. All goes well, very good, but things usually don't go all that so well. Like the Italians say, not so well. Know us so well. That's it. Know us so well. So you could actually literally in a later incarnation through circumstances after you've, after birth and so on, your parents get killed, or I hate to say that, but any number of possibilities and so on, and you end up being like Charles Mason, who was a old soul, a very, very high illumined old soul, but he got really, really torn apart.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, in misincarnation. So
it's interesting.
So anyway,
oh, sorry, you go.
Oh, well, I was going to say, so that's basically it. At the end of 2,000 years from now, gate of life, gate of death, you're in the fifth dimension, or you're off somewhere else, still in the third. Basically, that's it.
What's that? Why? Okay. Yes.
Dinner's on the table.
Just wait one sec. What's that? Well, it'll be fine. This is a directional mic. Oh, my girlfriend was just wondering if she could do some staple gunning in the next room, and this is a directional.
No.
Yeah, this is a directional mic, so it doesn't catch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, definitely, it's interesting, and I always heard like how the Jews and all these races, they want you to go in the rapture, which is just the end of the age of Aquarius, isn't it? Where you get teleported off. Well, but then you sit. If you stay, then you get to have the help the Earth, but in the fifth.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Well, these guys, the rapture was started by somebody, I can't remember his name, but there's a phrase in the Bible that you will be taken up to be with those that are in the clouds, something like that. So he got this whole idea that you're going to be sitting there, and all of a sudden you're going to rise up, your clothes fall to the ground, you're going to rise up to the ceiling, and people bought into that, and all he's talking about is the radionic host, of the people in the clouds, you will be with us in the clouds. He's talking about this. So it's just mind-boggling, actually, this whole ascension, rapture thing that these guys talk about, So, because that's not the way it's going to happen.
Absolutely not.
How high did you float up? Up beyond the first cumulus cloud, and out past the solar system, at the end of the galaxy, maybe that's where you stop. Where do you stop?
Yeah, exactly. Straight to Saturn warp gate. Why not?
Yeah, we're all going to go to the Saturn warp gate. So, anyway,
off the rings of Saturn there, yeah. And I got to get you that picture too of that. Stargate off the rings of Saturn.
Yeah.
And no, it's been quite interesting, and the quite wild thing actually with the Revelatorium and everything, and the understandings gained is that the outlook that you get and the differences you can perceive, and the illuminations will come in, and then but the abilities regaining your abilities is one of the great things I find, because and then as the Revelatorium says in there about how when you switch out from the animal matrix memory and then you go back to your inductions and dischargings or something like that.
Well, that's the Melchizedek teachings in the beginning of the 70s that sort of they presage the Revelatorium revelation stuff aren't the teachings, but the Revelatorium stuff came from the teaching. In this respect, there's a chapter in the Revelatorium called Cosmic Overplus.
Yeah.
Then there's a whole chapter dealing with that on the Luciferian rebellion. Then a chapter following that dealing with the aftermath of the rebellion, which is still tied to the Cosmic Overplus. And then there's a chapter after that about the new creation in Andromeda, which is what the whole name of the game is. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
The only time the term Cosmic Overplus was even mentioned in the teachings in 70, 71 area, or 71 and so on, early 70s, was in the expression Luciferian self-will rebellion of the Cosmic Overplus. And what the Cosmic Overplus was never said. It was never mentioned beyond that single phrase. But, as I say, without that phrase having been mentioned in the teachings, it would not exist, flushed out as it is now in the Revelatorium. There's a bit of an interesting story. I might, because we've still got a wee bit of time here.
Oh yeah, we got lots of time.
The way I mentioned that the inductions that are coming and the energies that are coming in from all over, Lucifer proposed a way using the frequencies of the Cosmic Overplus. That's why it's a self-rebellion of the Cosmic Overplus. He saw a way to use the frequencies, and the Cosmic Overplus only exists in this local universe of 1,000 galaxies, because this local universe is the bifurcation point for a whole new super universe that's starting up in Andromeda. People see, I think we mentioned this last week, people see bifurcation, cell splitting and becoming, they see like poof, then it jiggles, and then now it's 4, then it jiggles, now it's 8. They see an instant pop. Well, actually, it's atom by atom, but it just does it lightning fast. So it looks like a pop, but it's not just like, it's psh, psh, psh. So this local universe is like the first atom. Okay.
Of like a chain reaction pretty well. And
yeah. And Orion, and why Orion is key center here, is because it's the portal through which the bifurcation parts are moving through.
Yeah.
And Earth is in the center of it all, because here's the training sphere where the soul atoms to populate the new creation are being trained. We're being trained, are being trained. There's 100 trillion soul atoms in Orion ready to go that have all come through Earth over the last 250 million years, which is when the root race program started. The population that's here now are the Asians, are the last of that root race evolution going through in preparation, being trained, and they got bogged down, so volunteers from all over creation have come in to help. And here we are, the so-called disciples of Christ, sons of Abraham, daughters of Abraham, the sons and daughters of Noah and all that, the enlightened ones today, light workers. We're the volunteers that came in to keep things going and help move things ahead.
So would the sons and daughters of the solitude for Atlantis be like the same thing?
No, the sons and daughters of Atlantis would be like right now Earth has a planetary council of 144 men and 144 women. Now these are attuned through the 5th dimension.
Yeah.
There's some, most of them are walking around. The whole idea of the original, in 71 was to bring all of them together and get them all going. They only got a handful of them together, Now, see, even the really, really bad ones, for the most part, in their soul atom action, in their higher soul atom action, so on, regardless of what the outer ego is doing, stupidly, the soul atom itself is doing, except for the demonic ones, the fallen ones and so on. Those are the soul atom, they're not the whole soul atom, but they're the parts that have a lot of work to do, but everybody else, even the guy that's running down the street with a rifle, doing one of these attacks in Portland and so on, the soul atom might be trying to fix things. The soul atom is doing its thing totally apart from what the outer ego is doing. That's what I'm getting at. So even if there's no, 3rd dimension outer activity that could be better, the higher action is still going on. Okay.
Yeah.
So there was only a handful of the which were called the elect of Christ, which are the planetary, the planetary government, the 144 men and 144 women. Well, the sons of the solitude in Atlantis were, that's what they were.
So essentially, they're among that group.
Yeah. See, Enoch was one of the, he was being trained as one of the, being prepared to be one of the elders of Atlantis. Sons of the solitude, they were called,
Yeah.
Right. But he got taken out. It was by a sheer accident. He got taken out by, he disappeared from the face of the earth. So historically, they say he walked with God and he was taken up by God, because how else do you explain the fact that he just disappeared, totally disappeared? He was, he used to amuse himself by going out on the weekends without telling anybody where he was going or even doing it. Rummaging around through old archaeological sites looking for artifacts and stuff. It was his brain eraser. He used to. Anyway, he was in an old temple rule, and the big rock door rolled shut on him, and he couldn't get out, and that was why he disappeared.
Yeah. And wasn't it said that near the end, because it takes him a long time to die, near the end, didn't it say he got bitter towards the creators?
Well, I'm pretty sure he got a little ticked off. Yeah, why are you letting this happen?
Yeah, intervene, or but then.
Yeah, open the door for me, will you?
Yeah, because he didn't tell anybody. So.
Well, nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew he was even gone.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it, I'll just go with this. In this incarnation, he was still doing it. He would, at night when he was dreaming away, he'd suddenly get it, and he'd take off and go on a long romp somewhere, Then he'd spend a whole pile of time trying to get back to where he was, hitchhiking, running, grabbing a bus. I mean, just so he was away with he was way out somewhere musing along. All of a sudden he had like an urgent feeling to get back to where he was.
Yeah.
So he fought his way back as fast as he could. And then he popped into a room that was like a briefing room, with a bunch of chairs, people sitting there, and a table over in the corner and it was Christ Michael sitting there doing the briefing. And he just looked down at him and said, "Do that again, you stay there." That's a pretty good admonishment. Do that again, you stay there. That's the way it works in the higher dimensions. There's no big, long, mealy-mouthed explanations. So it's just get said what needs to get said.
That's what I like, how there's not like emotional tie-in. It's just fact after fact.
No, it's just get the job done. Get the job done. That's why I keep saying it's like black and white. There's no. See, emotions, here's another thing that's kind of really interesting, because a lot of people know about this. The Draconi, etc., are really, they have no emotions, absolutely none. And they're very intrigued with the fact of emotions. The alien grays, I think it's the tall ones, I'm not sure. They will, inject into somebody's consciousness and hallucinate them through a traumatic experience of some kind, to see how they react emotionally, because to them this is really neat, because emotions only exist on this planet because mankind is in the animal matrix body formats, and what we call the emotions are in the animal matrix programs as the engrams and instincts that they survive by. So it's only mankind that has what are called emotions, which is why all of the different aliens that are here supposedly by sanction or not, have such an intriguing interest in what this emotion stuff is all about. But that's also why there's so many people around, like from Draconis and these other planetary places, so they have no emotions at all, because from where they're from, there's no such thing.
And out in public, you could really sense them too, especially with these higher energies coming in. You can sense the non-spark kind of thing.
Well, consciousness knows consciousness, and that's as simple as that, So,
it was just like the big problem with Atlantis there too. Why apparently I heard from another thing, why it was sunk was because after the corruption of the sons and daughters of the Solitude, the Vril population subclass of the Draconis droned a bunch of the Atlanteans in their main population center of Atlantis, and then so it was apparently sunk after Sodom and Gomorrah conflagrated each other.
Well, Sodom and Gomorrah, I explained this last week, we're in the cities of the plains. This is, north of Spokane, around the BC border, and down offshore of Miami. And this is, well, how much time do we have left? Because this.
Oh, there's no time limit on this.
Oh, there's no, all right. Well, 2.5 billion years ago, there was a planet. Oh, astrophysical. I forgot to say. Every planet has a family. Every star has a family. We're talking back about the tree of life.
Yeah.
Every star has a maximum family of 12, a potential of 12. Nobody has like 48.
Yeah.
And they might only have 2 planets so far, but they have a potential for their 12. Well, this solar system has the 12 planets. Okay, one of them, the 9 everybody knows about. The 10th is in the photosphere of the sun, called Vulcan of all things.
Yeah.
You know, Star Trek was, the Star Wars was piping on that one. You know, it's called Vulcan. The 11th is what everybody has called Nibiru. Now it's a elliptical orbit, way out past Pluto and way back in. But it's only evolved down to the 4th dimension. This 3rd dimension hasn't formed yet, which is why you don't see a planet come down and go around. It was waiting, you know, they see a double photo image, you know, sun, oh, look, there it is, you know, but that,
yeah.
No. But 3,500 years ago when it came around the last time, because the 4th dimension is pretty powerful, you know, it's an arc and it spreads out. Well, it interferes, or I shouldn't say interferes, it duly affects the consciousness of the population. Okay, and at the time, 3,500 years ago, Earth's consciousness was in a totally low state. This was back when the Melchizedek king had to come in to try and even put a germ of spiritual law back into the population, because it was down there at the bottom, right down there at the bottom. And so when Nibiru came around, the consciousness just went wild all over the place. Not like people did things, but they reacted in mass, you know. So you had all kinds of heavy, you know, effects going on by the passage. The Anunnaki, who were in the 4th dimension there, were able to walk right in and set themselves up. And there were, you know, the Norse gods, the Roman gods, you know, all these guys. They came unto the women of man, you know, and spawned the Nephilim, you know, these 50-foot giants and all that place. Well, when it came around this time, the consciousness is very, very, very stable compared to then. I mean, even though it should nowhere near where it should be because of the fall of Atlantis and the crucifixion of Christ, nowhere near where it should be. Nonetheless, still infinitely better than it was. So Nibiru came around, nothing happened. And because of the quarantine that Christ put on place 2,000 years ago, coming and going to the Anunnaki, weren't able to come in and walk around again. So it's Nibiru came and went, and everybody knew what happened. There was no such thing. It was all a big hoax, you know.
Yeah.
And it did a little, I mean, but not much. It was in the early 2003, 2004, around that time that it came and went. And then the last planet is the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It was originally a very large planet, solid matter planet like Earth, rather than gas giant like Jupiter, called Meldick. And it was also a confinement planet, meaning that, now this is 2.5 billion years ago, the worst of the Luciferians throughout, like the dragon was cast into the earth. Well, there was an original cast into Meldick, as it were. It was a confinement planet. It was a prison planet. The worst of the ones there had come from Draconis, and they had mastered planetary law, which they could use to control others. You know, black magic. I mean, that's what black magic, using your senses to affect others your way. See, and they had taken that to a level that pretty well couldn't be made worse. You know, they were down about as low as you could get. They were called the Black Masters of Draconis. Well, they're quarantined, confined on Meldick, and they got the conditions going there so bad that the atmosphere literally became explosive from the negative shit conditions. It's a simple thing. Well, simple. If you rub silk and wool together, you get static electricity.
Yeah.
But when consciousness is working in disharmony with cosmic law, or spiritual law, or the law of the creators and so on, there's a friction created in the fourth dimension called N plus static. Okay, and it's called N plus because static itself is part of the intelligent side of things, which is a plus. Intelligence is the plus. Cosmic overplus is because there's more intelligence than normal. That's what the cosmic overplus. It's an override of intelligence on this local universe. That's the cosmic overplus was. But anyway, but negative is aligned to substance, which is attractive, and intelligence positive is aligned to the plus, which is projective. So you have P plus static, which is it's not actually static, but you have your P plus. That's in the matrices of the animal kingdom. It's the P plus static that's holding the engrams for their instincts and all of that, because it's projective plus intelligence. It goes outwards. But when the static rubs and so on, it reverses the polarity of the static. So you now have N plus static, which means it's attracting. It's intelligence based because it's a spark of intelligence, but it's got a negative. So it's called N plus static. And that's bad because it accumulates.
And isn't it
big?
And isn't it sorry for isn't it sticky as well? Like it sticks to things?
Well, yeah, to a point. It's like plutonium more than the static that you get from your doorknob when that's ordinary static woolen. So, but N plus static in somebody's consciousness guarantees that they're going to be negative in what they do in their outlook. What we call evil, what man calls evil, in its totality, is N plus static present in the consciousness of those that are okay, because it's a reverse polarity. It's really literally a reverse. It's like an instinct, but in a reverse action. So instead of being good to save the animal's life, it's bad because it takes the other person's life.
Yeah.
You use it to that kind of. Anyway, N plus static. It's in the fourth dimensional levels of your consciousness as an auric thing. Well, they were doing shit that was so bad, the friction in their consciousness, of the population, that the atmosphere of Melday actually literally became explosive. Right. So then they factioned into two, and I'm going to get to something interesting before it's over. They factioned into two, feuding halves, and they had, power of the crystals and so on, i.e. lasers, and they fired the lasers, and I said, and it blew the planet. The atmosphere exploded. And that was, so now you have big chunks of rock hitting Mars, and you've got those big gashes, and you've got big outcrops stuck out, just like in it went, it's still there, and so on. You've got moon filled with pockmarks all around from the same time. The whole entire surface of the moon is filled with little pockmarks, from the chunk, 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 and so on. The asteroid belt is the main body of the solid part. The oceans and stuff went out to the Kuiper belt beyond Neptune, which is sort of the wetter comets, the ice, and then the atmosphere and stuff went out into the Oort belt out past Pluto. That's where those belts were created. But one of the loosened moons from Meldick hit Earth 2.5 million years ago, and it caused Earth's in other words, just exploded with volcanic cracks and stuff, and out came the magma. So the whole surface of the planet was covered with two-strand, Drost DNA instead of the original crystalline 12-strand DNA.
Yeah.
The granite rocks that are, the Canadian Shield is still an outcrop of them there, and down in Australia there's an outcrop. That's all part of the original, crystalline surface. But everything else was all covered in deep, tired, thick, hard magma. And then the population, or 1,000 years ago, a matrix of an evolution of third dimension, vegetation, mineral, vegetable, and animal, was precipitated to evolve up, and then it eventually, through its activities, would eventually drive the magma, because leaves fall, and now it goes down, and now it's 2,500 feet deep, and it's boiling away, and it turns back into
Quartz and things like that.
Yeah. So it's being converted. So that's what the whole purpose of the animal kingdom on the planet was for. And then, of course, the Luciferians came along 3.5 million years ago. Hey, come on down to this third dimension. It's great, And they got the Adamic world to come in, but they came into we're in the animal body. You've got 2 arms, 2 legs. So does every animal. You got a brain, every animal. You've got heart, lungs, every animal. It's the same.
Carbon 12, every animal.
Yeah. And the P plus engrams have been replaced by the N plus static, because mankind can do things that animals can't, i.e. they can, and that has crossed over in the predatory animals. And most of the insects are all from the Luciferian N plus static side that was created, because carnivores, in the proper way things are matrix, like a deer that knows it senses its time would come, just offers itself up to a carnivore very politely. Eat me, I don't mind, I'm ready to go, kind of thing. Oh, appreciate it very much, thank you. I'm playing with it, but that's what the idea is. Everything's done in harmony, not conflict. But the Luciferian side, with an N plus static input and so on, everything's done by conflict. And we're coming out of that now. So, I mean, the animal kingdom is amazing. Like the lion is starting to lie down again with the lamb,
Absolutely.
You see all over the internet all the time now, more and more all the time. Different species are buddying up, and it's great. Parrot and a cat are the best of friends, It's really, really good.
Natural enemies, but really natural
Yeah.
is the way we're explaining it, but natural to them would be they are like that. Oh, eat me, I'm done.
Yeah.
Take my sustenance.
Yeah. So I mean, like it's like the mineral kingdom, microbiology and so on. I mean, it preys on the third dimension, like blight on plants and viruses in humans.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all part of the negative side of things. Anyway, so Meldeck blew, all right, and the people that were in Meldeck were, sort of in I guess the term is purgatory, but they were in sort of a stasis until Atlantis, and because of the energies of Atlantis, the people from Meldeck were brought in, okay, including the 500 Black Masters, which presumably should have been okay. And they were put in Sodom and Gomorrah, which are the 2 cities of the plain, because they were well isolated from the rest of Atlantis. But they got going again, and the followers of Baal, B-A-A-L.
Yeah.
That wasn't a person. That wasn't an entity. That was a practice. The people today that are doing the adrenochrome, whatever it is, with
Adrenochrome, with the children and
the bloods and stuff like that. So it's unbelievably horrible. That stuff was on the street in Atlantis and Sodom and Gomorrah. So N plus static over the 2 cities, big black clouds of it. And they factored again, and they did their lasers again, and they blew Atlantis, because the atmosphere has exploded. That's what the fires over Sodom and Gomorrah were. And that, of course, disrupted a good part of the planet. The thing today is those 2 factions are at it again. You have the Israelis on the one side who are, where's the Khazarian
Mafia, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one half of the faction, and the Rothschild over is the other half. Those are the 2 factions that are trying to vie for the planet at the present time, but that's all being phased out now, because we're at the end of that whole show. No more, you guys, we're done, It's like, do that again, you stay there, Don't do that again because we're not allowing it. I mean, I don't know how to put it, but that's the idea. We're at the end of it. This next 2,000 years, there will be the whole of the third dimension on the planet, including the plants and the animals, all be forgone. The planet will be back to just a crystalline rock. The population will be 100% back in the 5th dimension where it belongs, and everything will be back on track to get the planet to Orion in time. and the seed atoms will be off into Andromeda. Probably a bit delayed, but without too much loss. I mean, the rebellion didn't go very far, but it was definitely with its irritation, because it did delay a lot of things.
Yeah.
It did delay. But the interesting thing, just to finish, 5 billion years ago, when Lucifer proposed bringing consciousness down into the third dimension to help speed up the evolution, you're going to live in a triune environment, a very rough one, i.e. the intelligence energy subs the third dimension, but you're in a triune environment like we are now. You don't see intelligence over there and subs up there. It's all the same. And in the seventh dimension, where the evolution would be headed to eventually, again, is triune. So he said, well, why not put him in a triune environment to start the training instead of, and that was his idea. That was brilliant. But you couldn't do that unless you had the overplus energies. It couldn't be before. It required the matrix that was put in place for the cosmic overplus energies to work with to do it. So that's why it's called the cosmic overplus, the rebellion of the cosmic overplus. But he was told that there are energies. It's a good plan, and they said, kudos to your intelligence here. That's a really great plan, but there are energies on the move that have been already set forth that will conflict with what you're doing, and so we have to say no. And he said, well, I think you're just pulling a fast one. And he disavowed the whole, and that's what the, fall of pride, and and then he actually rebelled against the creators and disavowed the whole hierarchy above them. So on. You're all self-made, I don't have to pay attention to you. I'm just go ahead and do it. And that's what they did. And that was the Luciferian rebellion of the self-will rebellion of the cosmic overplus. And that was it.
And what do you think? What do you think of this? So when Sodom and Gomorrah conflagrate each other, and because it wasn't like Maldek, but would you think that's because Earth was crystalline and Maldek maybe was not? So Earth probably had a higher structural integrity, both energy-wise and physically. So the whole planet didn't explode.
No, the whole planet didn't explode because it hadn't gone around the whole planet. It was only in Sodom and Gomorrah where the cloud. They were held. I mean, the main planet didn't have bad stuff going on. Across the foot of the Himalayas, there was a bit because of what came down out of Tibet after Atlantis and so on. But no, the whole of the planet of Maldek was covered in black N+ static, but only Sodom and Gomorrah was.
Okay.
But nonetheless, you made a good point here, because Noah's Ark. See, when you make an agreement, you and I agreed to do this. There's an arc in consciousness between us, which is sustaining the actions that we're involved with as we speak. When you agree with somebody, you have an arc in consciousness, and it's the arc in consciousness that holds the whole agreement thing together. The Ark of the Covenant was not a box with radiations coming out of it and so on. It was an agreement in consciousness between the Israelites at the time and the creators. The Bible uses the word God and so on. I'll say, so it's between the Israelites and God that they would act as the crucible for the upcoming advent of Christ 2,000 years ago. I.e. Jerusalem. All right. They agreed that they would be the crucible. Canada is the crucible for the Aquarian Christ, which Piscean Christ was an individual of the South. The Aquarian Christ is everybody rising up into Christ consciousness. But Canada is the crucible.
Oh, really?
That's why it's all going on here. Canada has a lot. It's sort of like because Canada is the crucible this time around, not for the Aquarian Christ coming through. That's another point. I forgot to make that. Part and parcel. Remember, I said that the Templars went across Canada, setting up the 9-point Cyclonic law and so on.
Yeah.
Well, that was important. And when Smallwood put the 10th province, i.e. Newfoundland, in, it blew the matrix. So because Canada is the crucible, they had to reconstruct the energy configuration, and that's what the whole new constitution that Trudeau brought through was all about. Now you have 5 male provinces, 5 female provinces, i.e. English, Quebec. You have a money system. Everything is based on. It's out of the, it's out of the 12. How the English count things is. It's into the metric and all of that. It was all put in to restabilize the country, which it did. Now, here's an interesting thing. When I was talking about the elect of Christ people 2071, one of them wrote a paper that outlined a complete exposition of women's rights, like a complete women's rights declaration.
Yeah.
Sent it to Marc Lalonde, who at the time was Trudeau's secretary, private secretary. When Trudeau formulated the new constitution, that piece of paper was in there intact, 100%, as the women's rights part of the new constitution. Amazing thing. I mean, it was just amazing. Mulroney took it, pulled it out, made a couple other changes, and it was called the Meech Lake Accord.
Yeah.
He pulled out the women's rights section that had been handed to them through Christ Action. So anyway, the Constitution didn't get fully in the way it should have been, but still not too bad. You know,
that's why it's, you know, commonly referenced, like in the States, it's the Constitution done under God's law. But in Canada here, because the provinces lost their sovereignty when they went into receivership with the Crown, and then we have the Constitution Act, which is pretty much a bylaw of a corporation. It was essentially what it was the B&A Act from the British Board of Trade, but with everything about personal rights and liberties scrubbed out of it really good.
Well, now see, the Americans did the same thing. It was 49 octaves of the astral planes that were represented by the 49 states, and the 49th octave is the highest. And of course, Alaska at the top was the 49th, so it's at the top. But when they put it in Hawaii, pushed it in, it disrupted the matrix. But since the United States wasn't the new crucible, they never reconstructed it. But that's where a lot of the instability is in the States right now, because, you know, the presence of Hawaii. But that's, again, another story. I had something I was trying to mention. We're back on, Ark of the Consciousness, Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
So the Ark of the Covenant was between the Israelites and, you know, God and the Israelites, that they would act as the crucible for the upcoming advent of Christ 2,000 years ago, which they did and which happened. Okay. Now, the fact that the Romans took them out, that's a different story. But anyway, so in preparation, Moses was given the 10 Commandments as rules to live by, to get them up to snuff in time, which it did.
Yeah.
See, why wasn't the 10 Commandments given to somebody else? It was given to the Israelites, who were at that time in really bad spiritual shape, so that by the time of 2,000 years ago, the Jewish community at the time was pretty good, you know, over and above, or underneath and above the Roman shit going on. But the Israeli side of it was pretty good. Spiritually, they were pretty good. So that's what the 10 Commandments were for. Okay, so now we're back to Atlantis, and in a safeguard against the planet blowing like Meldeck did, because you raised that question.
Yeah.
The possibility was there that it could disrupt the whole planet or blow it apart instead of just disrupt it. All right. Noah and his wife formed an ark in consciousness, and they brought in the whole matrix of the animal system, male and female, into the ark. They were holding the entire matrix of the third dimension in their consciousness in case the planet blew, so it could be reissued, or if it blew to such a point that the whole outer surface was basically, it could be reconstructed. So it was an ark in consciousness, not a boat with oars.
Yes.
Simple as that. You know, we found the ark. It's buried under 4,000 feet of mud up on the side of
a mountain. Yeah.
You know? No, it's an ark in consciousness between Noah and his wife. They held the entire matrix of the animal kingdom, 2 by 2, because the animal kingdom was matrixed on a male and female. And see, that's another aspect too. I'll touch on soulmates, but it won't take very long. But when you incarnate, see, you're in the 5th dimension higher, you're an androgyne being. Like, as you sit, you're male and female, you have your two halves, separate consciousness, but together working as one.
Yeah.
This is the principle of the only begotten son daughter, together as one, which is the principle of the Alpha and Omega, together as one. You know, that's where it started. Then the only begotten son daughter are the same, but only we're out there doing it. And here we are, we're the feet on the ground, you know, male. But when we incarnated into the matrix of the animal kingdom here on earth, which was a divided male and female of the species, we had to divide also into a male and female. So that's what your soulmates are. The original androgyne being that split into two halves, you have a soulmate on the planet somewhere in female, somewhere on the planet. Everybody has somewhere on the planet their soulmate, not the one that has really good boobs, not the one that has a really good butt, but you have a soulmate somewhere on the planet that your other half. Everybody has, unless they passed and then haven't incarnated again, because that's entirely possible. But
continue.
Well, I was going to say, you incarnated 2-3 years apart. You can even incarnate on opposite sides of the planet. And there were about maybe 15 soulmate pairs that were actually brought together. You know, at that time, they didn't. Because your soulmate doesn't mean you're going to click. You know, there's one of the fellows I met the girl too, and it was unbelievable. They were absolutely identical. Absolutely identical. He said, shit, he says, it's just like looking in the mirror, you know. Only she had long hair and he had short hair. That was, you know, she was a woman and he was a man. But you know, you look like your soulmate, not necessarily. That was an extreme case. It was really quite amazing. But Mary and Joseph were soulmate pairs.
Yeah.
There's one that's still together as a soulmate pair, and another that I know that got together after the fact as a soulmate pair, and that's about, as far as I know right now, as I speak, the only true soulmate pairs that I know of. There might be others, but those are the two I know of.
Yeah.
Actual, real soulmate pairs, you know.
What I believe, like with my partner and I, Susan, what I believe is that we're the soul affinity pair instead of the soulmate pair.
Well, there's two. Yeah, affinity is also, affinity means that you are on the same frequency and you're completely compatible in your soul expressions, but you're not the split atom.
Yeah, the ovarian split.
But you can still work together doing Christ work just fine, you know, because maybe your soulmate is, say, I know where my soulmate is. My soulmate's not going to make it anywhere near close in this incarnation, you know.
Yeah.
So,
I believe both of us are whole soul atoms incarnating.
Well, no, whole soul atoms don't necessarily. There's no whole soul atoms walking around, but there is to a point, okay? Because again, this is off on another part of another issue, but as you are a whole soul atom. You're brought into being as a whole soul atom. You have 199
ovarian splits.
Yeah, but you have 99 ovarian male atoms and 99 ovarian female atoms, and you have one atom which is both.
Yeah.
Okay. Now each male atom is itself male female. Each female atom is itself male female, and so there's always a pair. Okay. But the incarnations are usually the ovarian atoms that incarnate. Now and then the 199th male and female combined will incarnate, and it can represent by proxy the whole soul atom.
Yeah.
Now, Jesus and Mary Magdalene 2,000 years ago were the 199th soul atom ovarian of Michael, and represented who has seen me has seen the blood. I mean, you know, they could have melted the planet with a blink of an eye instead of getting crucified, but that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah,
you know, that's why Mary Magdalene was 3 days, you know, sitting outside the tomb while Jesus was going through his transfiguration into Morantia fifth dimension substance form, where he could drop his frequency to visibility, which is why he was seen around the planet for 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, Coxacodal down in the middle Americans there, you know, the great white god.
Yeah.
Coxacodal, yeah, well, Jesus queuing them up. You know.
Yeah, that was the Mayans. Was it the Mayans or the Sand Mayans?
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. No, it's great. It's a great
Well,
discussion today.
yeah, actually, that kind of was a good spot to stop. You know.
It definitely was. No,
Yeah,
it was a very good discussion today, Del Star. We definitely appreciate having you on, and there's going to be many, many more discussions.
yeah.
Stay tuned, everybody. Our schedule is Wednesdays is our discussions, and then the Sabbath, which is Saturday, the last day of the week, is going to be the Stargram readings. This week on Saturday, we'll start with the introduction in the Revelatorium because it's Volume 1, and then every Saturday we'll do Stargram 1 to start from the start, go to the end, and continue on with intelligent design, start, end, and then we'll repeat. And by that time, radionics should be ready to go.
Ready to go again. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. For sure.
excellent.
Yeah. Now I could make a recommendation here. Start with the InDesign because the Revelatorium relies in part on stuff in the design, whereas the design doesn't rely on the Revelatorium in part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was just one of the things I noticed was I'll tell you later about it, but about the Volume 1, Volume 2 with the Revelatorium, and it's just
Well, actually,
backwards, kind of like in
the original
between.
volume, the original volume you bought, they were originally combined. There was originally just one Revelatorium, but it got so big, it was already 450 pages and bursting at the seams. The stuff's coming in all the time. And so I broke them off into two halves.
Yeah.
And actually, to my amazement, when it was done, the intelligent design stuff was pulled out. What was left is now the Revelatorium, but there was only about 30 or 40 pages difference between the two. It was almost an equal split.
Right? Like, isn't that great?
Yeah. So.
And that's how creation works. Absolutely quality.
Yep. Well, there you go. And actually, as a matter of fact, you said that because the intelligent design and creation is on the intelligent side, and the Revelatorium is definitely on. If you look at it, the principles of it, so it's definitely it talks about stuff that's on the female side.
Yeah.
So it's a split. You're right. I hadn't seen that. That's good.
Yeah, the intelligent design is good, and I always figured it was kind of like the first one, like the break-in, because it gives you all the metrics of the qubit and everything like that, and how the energy transfers and staffs and rods and
Yeah.
everything like that. It also goes through all your soulmate pairs and everything
Yeah.
in the intelligent design. So, but the series is great. Can't wait for radionics to come out. I'll get those pictures to you right away.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I got to pull it off my other hard drive. And then so we'll call it at that.
Yep.
Okay,
right.
cool. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm your host, Peter Ross of the Milk Family. We're here with Del Nova Star Livingstone, the wordsmith of the Revelatorium Revelations. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you all next week, and I'll see you Saturday for a Stargram reading. Thanks, Delanova. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Yep. Always a pleasure is a good way to put it.
Oh,
Bless everybody. There you go.
Yeah, indeed.
I always sign off my emails, bless, instead of some flowery, I just say bless, why not?
I like the for light and love with will serving creation.
Yep.
That's a good one too. So for light and love with will serving creation, everybody stay tuned. Please subscribe to the channel. We are in the golden age. You can find copies of the Revelatorium at Amazon.com. Just search Revelatorium. It's the only one that pops up. And enjoy. Keep up with your readings, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks, Dels.
Point to make, if you go to YouTube.
Yes, YouTube.
And Revelatorium or Intelligent Design, you'll come up with about 12.5 interviews that were done the last year and the year before.
Excellent.
At that channel in Toronto.
Excellent. Everybody make sure you check out those YouTube videos. Type in Revelatorium. You'll see it. It'll pop up. So everybody enjoy your night, and we'll see you all next time. Enjoy. Thank you for tuning in, and please subscribe.